Well, they're more than your average field trip. Jaunts to Costa Rica, London, Boston. Those are just some of the school trips taken by Ottawa public school students in the past month. But how educational are overseas field trips and how affordable? Well, our weekly education columnist Joel Westheimer has some thoughts on this. He's a professor of education at the University of Ottawa. Good morning, Joel.
Good morning, Robin.
Did you ever go to Costa Rica, London, Boston when you were in school?
I did take some trips in my school, and I was very fortunate. I was in a school that managed to do a bunch of those trips, and I did both domestic and abroad trips. And we all know the incredible value of travel, and I can't ignore the fact. I'm listening right before I came on. Of course, we're talking about the alleged terrorist plot, and we've just gone through the Boston Marathon thing. I don't think there's ever been a more important time to expose kids to different parts of the world, to create that kind of mutual understanding of people who are different, and getting those cross border understandings going as much as possible. Now, so that's the first thing that struck me as I came on today. But one of the biggest things about education that we know is that the most important aspect of education is the relationship between the teacher and student. And that relationship is a little bit artificial in the classroom. We have all these scripts we follow. Kids know they're in school. They're supposed to not like the teacher. The teacher knows the kids are supposed to act out. It's this script that is very hard to escape. And one of the things that happens when you leave the classroom and do something out of your comfort zone in particular is that you break those scripts and you have much more authentic relationships. We all know the kinds of close relationships we had with camp counselors or any other setting where there's 24-hour time together. Those are really valuable, and teachers and students really cherish those. And you come back from a trip like that, and education in that classroom is changed forever. And that, I think, more than anything else, is the incredible value of these kinds of trips.
I wonder, though, if there's a bit of a social divide on who can actually afford them, because they are pretty expensive. I want to play you a clip here. This is Annie Kidder from the group People for Education. She said that school trip costs in Ontario can be prohibitive and exclusive. Here's what she had to say.
We have been looking at, what the policies are in different schools, and if boards have policies about fees for things like field trips, including big expensive ones, maybe going to Europe or New Orleans or wherever. What we wish is that there were pretty clear policies to make sure that nobody's excluded. That sense of I belong in the public education system along with everybody else is very, very important to students. And if you feel as if some kids can afford to go on big fancy trips or even on the small field trip and others can't, it makes you feel that you don't belong.
So how do you solve that problem?
Annie is absolutely right on principle, and this is a big problem, and she's wrong on execution, and here's why. You can't create policies that take care of all those problems. Policies would be a bureaucratic nightmare that would make these trips absolutely impossible. This can't come from the top down, but it does have to come from the bottom up, and there are many examples. Last night, knowing we were going to be talking about this, I spoke to my good friend Joan Kvitkva, who's a teacher in Oregon, and she did many of these trips, and she worked in a school where many kids could not afford these kind of things, and they had a lot of creative solutions, as did many other teachers that I spoke to. So some schools, for example, tell parents that we're going to go on this trip if we raise enough money for everyone to go. And please, everyone contribute what you can. And they give status reports. They say, well, we've reached this goal. If we get this much more, we will all go. If not, we can't do the trip. And it is important to have that. It's important to have a system that doesn't stigmatize kids. And teachers and principals are very creative about that. I would, in schools where there's a mixed population, I think the best way to do it is to have parents give what they can and convey the importance of really giving what you can so that it's possible to go. I prefer that to the fundraising approach in mixed schools because, we all hate that dreaded knock on the door from your middle class or upper middle class neighbor saying, could you donate some money so my kid can go to France, right? Yeah. I mean, for the kids who don't need it, the parents should pony it up, right? But that creates good spirit in the class. Now, it's much more difficult, and it's really a dilemma. I don't have an answer for schools where none of the parents can afford to do this or have the time to fundraise and so forth. And, there's no question. Here's where a policy wouldn't be bad, where there is some provincial money or board-wide money to redistribute a little so that this is possible for all children. But the thing about that I've seen in some schools when they're raising money collectively, either part through fundraising or part through parents giving what they can, is that it not only makes these trips possible for all children without stigmatizing them, but it also creates a sense of community, right? That we're all going to make this happen. And then when it finally does happen, it's an incredibly valuable and relationship-building experience.
You said you were thinking about the issue of the Boston bombings when you were coming in and a school being on a field trip there. And it's made me wonder, if you're there with your school, of course, it would be a nightmare for parents who are going, are my kid's okay, all the rest of it. But what do you think that a teacher can teach kids in that situation when something happens on the ground?
That's a really nice question, and of course that's an extreme, right? And I'm sure there were schools there. In fact, I know that there were some class trips that were told not to leave their hotels and so forth. And in the extreme, there's much to talk. It's a teachable moment in the sense of talking about what's going on, talking about the possibility of racial profiling being a fallout, how we handle these things. But even in the less extreme, which I'm more interested in because this will happen on every trip, when you're on trips, the unexpected happens, right? And that's the beauty of these trips. It's both the challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is, within a classroom, everything is predictable. It's neat and tidy. But when you step out into the world, things are messy, and you don't have to go to Costa Rica or to Boston to have that messiness happen. You can walk out of the classroom into downtown Montreal or Toronto or Ottawa, and things happen that are unexpected. And it's in those unexpected lessons that I think teachers really can capitalize on that to teach about how you handle situations like this, how we think about people, how the news media is covering events like the Boston Marathon. What are the different perspectives? What are the different takes? What does it mean? And it's those kinds of experiences. I think those, even for the kids and teachers who were holed up in a hotel, which is unfortunate because they had to miss their trip, they will, of course, never forget this experience, and their relationship with their teachers, I'm willing to bet, will be forever changed for the better. They'll be more authentic and a closer tie, which will make education in the future far easier.
Well, I'm asking our listeners on Twitter, was there a field trip overseas or not that changed your life? If you can tell us your story, we'd really like to hear it. At Ottawa Morning is where we are, or you could send us an email, ottawamorning@cbc.ca. And what do you think? Ought the provincial government, if these school trips are so valuable, ought the provincial government subsidize a little bit of that money? You can send us your thoughts on that as well. Thanks very much, Joel. Really interesting.
Thank you, Robin.
That's Joel Westheimer. He's our education columnist, education professor at the University of Ottawa as well. And you can find Joel on Twitter too. He's at Joel Westheimer.